Hey everybody, Dan Hardle and Mike Hardle back here again for another episode. Consistent. It's December 14th. We're trying to do some year-end Christmas specials for you. So here we go.
Cranking out the content, making sure we even have consistent content over the holidays.
Absolutely. So we're going to slam some back-to-backs, but we want to make sure that we've been hearing from some of you all that quite enjoy the podcast, which is great. And so again, we're committed to make sure that every single week you have some new consumable content from us. So
yeah, we're getting good feedback. If ever you feel so inclined to subscribe to YouTube, I feel like we're getting to that point where we're like the YouTube, hitting that bell, subscribe, or share the podcast. It does help us out, actually.
Yeah, where we have hundreds of people being like, yeah, that was a great episode. And I'm like, why aren't you a subscriber? You've apparently listened to every episode possible, but not subscribed. Okay, cool.
Yeah, just trying to grow the reach a little bit more. Spread the Medicare insurance, health insurance gospel a little bit.
So remember, we're going to be talking, in this podcast, we're talking Medicare specifically, health insurance, life insurance. Those are really the lines of business, some limited financial products, and then just business in general, right? So, and that's kind of more what I wanted to start this podcast off with, was talking some general business practices and specifically to our industry. It's just that time of year. We were talking earlier today. I'm surprised this year about how many carriers are still very heavily engaged at this point of the year. I'm still absolutely getting blown up. Text messages, emails, phone calls, strategizing. They're still trying to push through hard. I think there's some carriers that are not quite to their goals for where they want to be for January 1st, so they're still leaning hard for sales numbers. And they're already very heavily talking about, Q1 and Q2 already next year. And in years past, people very much had their foot off the gas. By December 9th, it was crickets. Everybody scurried away to their hiding place. I'm noticing this year, it seems like people want to just drag me out to work until December 24th at midnight. So
yeah, it's interesting how things have changed even in the past 3 or 4 years, because there were, December was probably notoriously, once AEP ended, it was very, very slow till the beginning of the year. And that's just absolutely for sure not the case. And this time of year, I think there's a couple of things that play into that, right? Which we still have open enrollment going on for the ACA side of things. And there's many of the insurance carriers, a lot of crossovers there. A lot of the brokers that are doing both, put down their Medicare pen, so to say, on December 7th, and then tried to hustle and maximize that last eight days or so of open enrollment. And then just the industry has become much more year-round. And what we've discussed even going into annual enrollment was, it does seem like AEP is still great. It's still important. It's still a high, a high season for the industry. But what we're seeing is that there's a lot more business to be written year-round. And now even the carriers pretty much expect there to be more business during OEP than
in
even AEP
years.
maybe.
Yeah, and I would speak to a couple of things. Remember, a reminder out there for people who are writing ACA or FFM, IFP, whatever acronym or description you want to use. If you're writing those products, remember, anything after the 15th won't go into effect on January 1st. So you're kind of at your deadline right now to get your apps in if you want a January start date. Anything after that is going to go into effect on February 1st. So just kind of a reminder out there.
By the time you're listening to this podcast, it's already too late. So that's going to go in for after January 1st. Yeah.
But remember, you can continue selling through at least January 15th on those plans. And, if you believe like I do, the government is going to continue to allow you writing those indefinitely, perceivably. I mean, we have these election codes and periods, and we'll talk about that more, but especially seemingly for regular health insurance, that is open for business, and they're taking apps well beyond the 15th of January. So that's when we're talking about next year and a business plan, a strategy, be very cognizant and aware of that.
So. Yeah, the election periods are about as porous as the border.
Yeah, that's a good description. The election codes in both ACA and Medicare are about as tightly secured and reined in as our southern border of the U.S., isn't it?
Yeah, so it's they're about as equally enforced right now. So that's my visualization for the year that I'm telling agents is people are just coming onto the rolls all throughout the year. So we might as well help everybody and do a good job getting everybody on the health insurance that they need. So
you can either be the agent writing the app and submitting it through and getting paid for it, or somebody else is going to be writing.
Or you can be the one complaining about it.
Yep, absolutely. So a couple things I also want to bring to attention, just the time of year, mid-December. For those of you who are kind of wrapping up and closing out business right now, a lot of corporations, businesses, their books, their financials, everything, they're trying to close out their year, right? And so between now and the end of January, most companies are going through reviewing, financials. They're looking at their payments from suppliers. They're looking at payments to vendors. They're making sure that their books are in orders. And so that's one thing that I want to all listeners, if you're an agent out there or a business owner, you should be doing the same. I really do think that it's a great time. We look at this period of year of there's a lot of, quote, downtime. It's just a little bit slower. People aren't quite as, the carriers, and people have holiday hours. And I will always encourage agents to still be working. It's just different type of work, but they should be taking that pause, that opportunity to meet with like their tax professional, their CPA, their tax planner, their attorney, if applicable. All those kind of business professionals that you have out there, now is a great moment to be having those meetings with all of those professionals and trying to get your ducks in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, it's a great time. I'm a big proponent of goal setting and planning year round, and I'm not necessarily a big fan of resolutions and resolutionists, but I think that we've already spent a lot of our portion of the last 2 months planning and course correcting for our strategy going into next year. So as an agent, as a business owner, you should definitely be taking a look at what worked this year, what's been working well, and having a good idea of where your business is at for you as an agent as you're going into the next year, knowing how many policies you have on the books, where you need to course correct, making sure all of the policies that you did write are actually going to go into effect, kind of tending to your book of business and stuff like that as well, in addition to properly setting goals for next year.
Yep, so kind of chiming in more on that. So mind your money, mind your business. So right now, I know that we're all salespeople out there, and sometimes the back end administration and the bean counting, the accounting work, or it's not as exciting as going to the transaction or the sell on the phone, but it's critical. So again, it's a great opportunity to, number one, Mike just said, make sure your business is in effect. We're actually still pouring through RFI reports, all kinds of stuff, or DMI reports, whatever you want to call them. Just seeing like what business did we already go through the effort and the spend and the investment to go and write, and what is not like taking effect, or what is pended or rejected. You all should be doing that as agents. And then from your apps that are submitted, you should be checking your commission statements to make sure you're actually getting paid appropriately for all of your policies. If you're not, you should be sending that off to a carrier and asking, for that commission, or, what is the reason or purpose that you're not being compensated on a policy. Should be absolutely doing that. And then going back to what you said is, before you start looking forward at what your growth strategy should be, it's a great time of year to reflect on everything from your personal effort on what you did well this year, what actually was effective as a business. If you're using multiple sources to generate leads, which ones did you do at a great ROI, so to speak, or a great return? What kind of misses did you also have? We do this every year as a business, and I can even tell you, I know of 2 huge screw-ups I did in marketing. I've talked about it before. I think we blew at least $250,000 or more on Sirius XM ads. I was thinking it was going to be my ace in the hole. It was going to be amazing. It was not. It was bad. It was a miss. That was a very expensive lesson to learn.
Yep.
Same with these pharmacy bags that we did years ago, where we used Medibag. We put our information on these bags. Every time people would go to a pharmacy, they'd pick up their meds, go in a bag with our information and great call to actions on them. I just thought, man, thousands and thousands of these bags in the hands of, seniors. We were just going to blow up our phones. It did not.
Mass direct mail last year was a big miss for us too. Our ROI was insane.
Yeah, it was way high on direct mail. So again, it's not uncommon. If
you light money on fire, at least sometimes it's nice to be able to feel the warmth. You know, sometimes you don't even get that.
Yeah, or I get to throw some equipment off of the roof of a 10-story building. Like some satisfaction there out of it. But every business goes through, things that you do extremely well, things you don't. But I think people should be reflecting on what did go very well this year, how they can enhance that, implement it even better in what they're doing. And then also what didn't do well, they should have that reflection, that period right now. And then to your point, people, I think, should be setting realistic and achievable goals that are actually attainable on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis for their business and what that looks like.
Yeah. If you're watching this on YouTube, I actually have a video in here of my keynote from our annual kickoff this year where we recorded that, and it's all about goal setting and effective goal setting and how to do that. So if you have some extra time, that's a cross promotion plug there for some additional content in the pipeline.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is be looking for vendors too. Maybe you don't have an accountant. Maybe you need one. Maybe you need a bookkeeper. Maybe you need new lead vendors for XYZ. Great time of year to kind of put, even though those vendors may not be available, good time for you to kind of put out your interest form, kind of come to the top of their inbox, so to speak, and say, hey, I want to get a demo on the calendar, first week in January, second, whatever that looks like. I think you should be looking for those vendors. Maybe you haven't taken the time to adopt our CRM. Maybe you haven't become as proficient with system X, Y, or Z. Great time over the next couple of weeks to be at home, doing your puzzle, drinking your glass of wine, whatever you're doing to unwind. You should be spending some of that downtime to get proficient with systems as well.
Yep, I think that's key. One of the things that I'm seeing in the industry, and you kind of hinted at it even from the carriers, is there definitely this year seems to be some more urgency. I don't think we're seeing this whole month off malaise like we've seen in the past for a couple of reasons. You have, obviously OEP going strong as well. And then I think that carriers are really looking towards making sure they get off OEP on the Medicare side of things on the right foot, because if I am reading the tea leaves right, I think there's a couple of things going on that are contributing to that. Number one is I think there are some carriers that are probably a little bit behind on their goals that they think they can catch up during OEP. And so we've seen it last year where some carriers really nailed it during annual enrollment. And then they're almost like foot off the gas because they kind of know they got to where they needed to be as a company, and they almost don't want to over-index too much, play that game. And so I think there's carriers that are trying to game plan for catching up during OEP. I think you also have, and this just came across the wire tonight and tomorrow, that the FCC did actually approve the third-party marketing entity across the board for FCC violations, that leads now need to be generated on a one-to-one basis, so that it's going to really affect the lead generation of not only this industry, but of every industry across the board. No more is it all this co-reg cross-marketing thing.
Resell.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, how long it's going to take for that actually to be implemented and clean that up. So you have that window closing on lead gen, and people are going to have to be kind of refiguring out the new world order there when it comes to the lead system. And then we are going into an election year as well. And so there's all sorts of external market factors that are going out there where I feel like there's a little bit more urgency right now and jumping into 2024 than there normally is at this time of the year.
Yeah, and if you're an agent or somebody listening right now and you just brought up something important, the election is every 4 years, right? But those enrollment seasons tend to be very different, particularly if you're marketing, advertising, and you're in a swing state. And I've done significant business in swing states, and if you're there, guess what? All the super PACs, all the political groups, they dominate the airwaves, the TV, the direct mail, all of it. And so what that does is two things. The consumer's interest and attention is really heavily focused on that. It's not about, I need to change my insurance plan or benefits or whatever else. So there's not typically as much consumer engagement or interest in their insurance, at least. And then the other thing, of course, is if you are trying to advertise, it's sometimes double, triple, 4X because of these the dominance and the amount of dollars that are going from these super PACs. So if you're listening, you should already be going, oh crap, I need to be, if I'm going to achieve my annual or my year-long goal, I'm going to have to front end and do more volume in business throughout the year before AEP, because it will certainly have some sort of an impact on your business.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out is I think OEP is going to be very important, and I think the carriers, obviously, they're smart, they're strategic, they're super involved. They have their consultants and their strategists that are telling them the same thing, that what's going to happen is the noise of the election. And, not to get too political, but we know that this year is going to be extremely tumultuous. Just the absolute divisive nature of politics right now. It's going to be ugly and it's going to act like a crescendo going up into the election time. So I think OEP, there's going to be a good opportunity for agents to continue to write a lot of business. And then as we get towards the summer and the fall, closer towards the election, dollars spent on ad revenue, noise, and attention is going to be at a premium. And it's going to be very difficult for you to be reaching out to consumers on the Medicare side of things. And people will just by nature be distracted by whatever sort of media attention is going on between the two candidates and whatever other external factors are at play there as well.
Yeah, the other thing I would and again, the reason that we're bringing it up is we look at the business as it's an entire, again, year, month, quarter, weekly. We have to break everything down and actually achieve these benchmarks. If we want to achieve our monthly goal, we have to achieve our weekly goal, and one of the things that I have seen for a lot of years is that agents work very hard throughout fall, throughout annual enrollment, or if they're selling ACA open enrollment, and then they're like, whew, boy, I worked hard for that month or two, and then they do take off a few weeks in December, but I really don't see agents coming back and being engaged and fully working until sometimes mid-January or the end of January. For me, that is absolutely such a big mistake that agents make, because at the end of the day, even OEP is only a 3-month window for enrollment. And if you're taking off 2 to 4 weeks in January, every day is a precious day that you're not utilizing, and it's finite. Once those days are gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a weird trend that I would like to see agents getting. We all need our breaks. We all need our vacation. You need that time off. You need time with family and everything else. But do you really need 6 weeks of it consistently together? Probably not. Spend that week and a half with family during Christmas and do your activities or go on your trip. But then January should come along and you should be back at it, so to speak, trying to really grow your business, especially given the environment of next year with the election. And you're going to have to front load more of your volume and sales next year.
Yeah, exactly. It's a drum that I feel like we've been beating for the past 4 years, which is especially for, field agents, where a lot of times the field agents that have been in the industry for a long time went through this era where they could really go crazy during annual enrollment, work 70, 80, 90-hour weeks,
Yep.
and then essentially take months off. And the reality is the industry is just not like that anymore. The industry is continuing to move forward. Our carrier partners know that there is business to be had. There's people to be helped. There's all sorts of election periods that are open, and there's that expectation. And this was a big theme for us at our agent kickoff this year was, if you're not there, agent, and you're not writing that business, the industry's passing you by and somebody else is doing it. And if you think that you can just be an agent during annual enrollment and then kind of not pay attention until, the summer where you're getting ready for certs again, then you're going to be surprised at how many of your clients are moving away from you during OEP, how much more business you could have written, and how much further along you could have taken your business.
Yeah. So back to writing business again, I always look at it like everything's open for business. Even now in mid-December, if you start looking at different states and area, Texas has a SEP for the border crisis. Florida has an SEP for
the Gaza war, the Israel-Gaza conflict.
Palestine conflict, and so there's an SEP statewide.
There's one in Delaware for Biden's dog biting a Secret Service member, I heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's the most ridiculous. Anytime that a governor, declares a state of disaster emergency with FEMA, obviously they get some FEMA funding for that, the state does, but that also triggers those election codes that are legitimate, and the carriers actually do send out communications to the broker community, of course, saying, hey, of course, the COVID, disaster DST election code that was pretty open-ended for about 3 years, they're no longer accepting just like a random COVID DST code. But there are still a lot of those election declared disasters that are legitimate. The carriers are accepting in a lot of states. You have your 5-star opportunities in more than ever before. And remember, in January, the special election for duals and LIS, that opens back up again, in January, along with OEP, which is available.
T65s. So, I mean, you can see, plus all the other valid election periods.
It's just business is always open. And that's what I'm trying to kind of continue to message is like, I don't know why people have programmed themselves to say, I'm going to work hard for these 2 or 3 months, and then I'm going to take a break for 3 weeks or a month, and I'm going to work kind of semi-hard for 2 months, and then I'm going to take another break for 2 months. That is what hurts so many people, and I just don't understand why it's not, I'm just going to consistently work throughout the year, and then when it's AEP, I'm just going to put in an extra 10 or 15 or 20% more effort during that time. That's how I think ideally it should be, and we're trying to get people mentally to be there with this type of industry and this type of role that they're in, not these weird fragmented, segmented out quarters and times of the year that they work or don't work.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add on or chime into on the DST is that during COVID, CMS actually changed. It used to be a FEMA declared, so any federally emergency declared disaster was what generated that SEP. But during COVID, they changed it to any county, state, or federally declared disaster can now qualify for those election periods. And so, like you mentioned, there are all sorts of valid, and you do need to check with the carriers because they all have their own interpretations of kind of which SEPs their enrollment team is processing. But there is absolutely opportunities for agents year-round to be compliant and do business in a way year-round.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. So don't shoot the messenger for those listening going like, Agent Boost is out there proactively promoting and telling agents to you, hey, I'm not the one that made the election codes, but I'll tell you, if you go into Jarvis with United Healthcare, you can literally go to a big spreadsheet tracker that's available to you, and you can download and see every state and area throughout the entire country with those accepted DST or disaster codes. Humana sends it out through Ignite, through their blast. WellCare sends it out through their broker blast. So does Cigna. So all these carriers are sending out active and proactive communications to you all as a community saying, we're open for business in all these areas. So just FYI, again, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying, hey, people are utilizing these and they're writing business with them. And that's where you can actually go to a good verified resource directly from the carrier to see if there's any valid election codes.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that, to Dan's point, all of you agents that are out there are the message of this podcast would be to stay productive, keep your head in the game, take some time off. I personally don't really love this time of year from Christmas through New Year's. That's why, we usually travel or do something, but I don't like that malaise of the halfway through January through the beginning of the year where it feels generally very unproductive. I'm good for a few days of that, but then I kind of go stir crazy a little bit for me personally.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing, going back to the dialogue of what should you or could you be doing to be effective this time of year, and it goes back to your goal setting and your growth and how you're going to personally grow your business. Be conscientious of there's a lot of different ways to grow. And so be thoughtful of sometimes growth is I'm just going to keep doing exactly what I'm doing and I'm going to sell more volume. And because I'm selling more policies, I'm going to have more clients and I'm going to have more revenue. That's one way to grow. That's great. I think people should be doing that. But there's also other ways that people should be thinking about growth. Maybe growth is I only sell face-to-face right now and I actually want to learn how to sell over the phone as well so I can open up and broaden, like where I'm prospecting and who I'm prospecting to. That's another way to say, hey, I'm going to set this goal and I'm going to start growing my business. That's another example of how to grow. Another example is maybe you're going to add on a new line of business. Maybe you haven't been selling life or you haven't been selling ACA. Great. Take on a new line of business that you can offer to your clients. Maybe you're not going to increase your number of clients, but you're going to increase the number of policies that you're cross-selling to your clients. That's going to increase your revenue. Maybe you're going to work, if you're an agency owner, you're going to work on increasing your margins to where maybe you're not going to sell more volume, but you are going to have better margins or you're going to reduce cost and be more profitable. That's another way that you can be growing your business. So, and the other way, of course, is maybe there's good states or areas. touching the state where you're selling, and you can go get a non-resident license somewhere and, increase your prospecting pool. So again, these are just some of the ideas that I'm throwing out there that I think people should be. There's growth comes in a lot of different ways. And so I think that you all as business owners can decide for yourselves in which ways that you want to be growing, the how. But again, I think those are just some concepts that you should be aware of when you're planning that out for next year.
Yeah, the other thing that I think you should be doing is, and we're kind of hammering this home, is it's a lot easier to stay ready than it is to get ready or all the time or catch back up. And I can't remember if I talked about this on a podcast episode, but I had a call a few weeks ago with a lobbyist and strategist that kind of interfaces between CMS and some of the carriers. And she basically said that they're mapping and tracking a lot of the changes to the industry, significant historical timelines. And in the past 3 years, they have 80% of the changes. So the speed of the industry and the changes and the adjustments are happening at a rapid pace these days. And if you as an agent kind of check out of the industry for months at a time, you kind of don't know what's going on. And we see that all the time, even with agents that are fairly active, is they have no idea what's going on with Health and Human Services and CMS. They have no idea what's going on with changes in the industry, and they kind of almost fall behind very quickly. No longer can you just kind of check out mentally and pop back in during AHIP time if you're selling Medicare and go, oh, well, what are the few slight tweaks to the industry right now? Because there's been, cataclysmic shifts sometime by the time that you haven't been paying attention for 6 months.
100%. And I agree with that. And the other thing is they are changing rules about what you can and can't do, right? And so if you're not paying attention, you could even find yourself, not with intention, but finding yourself out of compliance, potentially having risk or exposure there if you're not paying attention. So that's kind of another important element to that. The other thing that I haven't maybe brought up, as much as I kind of want to, is again going back to prospecting and how are you going to continue to feed your business? Are you going to spend to grow your business next year, like with this another year behind or under your belt, so to speak? Do you have more revenue that you can then deploy into your business and grow and scale that way with revenue? Or are you going to go out and find new avenues in your local market, referral sources or partners? Are you going to bring on more CPAs that refer to you? Are you going to bring on more physicians and clinics and groups that are referring to you? Do you have that like dialed in, focused strategy for your growth next year? Is I think, and this is the kind of exchange or dialogue that I have on a pretty regular basis for, with a lot of our agents and agency partners. And I am always a little bit, taken back by a lot who are maybe not quite prepared or organized and don't really have like a very defined growth strategy. And so I think that's another thing that could definitely, there's some room for improvement there or opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we're always encouraging agents is we want modern agents, right? We want to build the next generation of agents. And those are doing these things that we're talking about, staying engaged in the industry, staying up to date with technology, making sure that you have the tools and capabilities, lead generation to continue to be successful. Because just like any other industry, if you fall behind, it's a lot harder to catch up than it is to kind of, stay up to date with the industry right now.
Yep, absolutely. Well, before we wrap, anything else you feel like we should be talking about year end, kind of closing the books and focusing on next year and growth and what agents could and should be doing?
Yeah, I think that, maybe people could be a little bit concerned about the industry right now, that it's a little bit of doom and gloomy a little bit, but we don't really feel that way at all on a high level. We certainly, at least here at Agent Boost, we feel like we're always going to continue to grow. We always have. And when external circumstances get more difficult, if you're an agent or an agency that is committed to all these things that we just talked about, you're going to win. You're going to be the ones that are set up to win. And so I'm actually excited about the way things are trending up for this next year, because I know that we're prepared. I know that we're going to be able to face whatever challenges come up, whatever changes in the industry, and we're going to be able to maximize those. And so I think you should have that same mentality as an agent. We joke about it all the time that the days of the carriers just needing a human body to have to drive out, and take that physical app at a kitchen table are done.
Right.
And so, you want to be more productive and more valuable as an agent, and just make sure that you're committed to being a modern professional, and that you're not only going to stay up to date with the industry trends, but all the information so you can be the best value to your clients as possible.
Yep. And again, I appreciate that point, that thought, and I'll add to it that Mike said is there is a lot of uneasiness right now, especially with that call letter from CMS. I mean, we did our whole other episode about it. I feel like we could have made 4 episodes about.
Yeah, maybe we should have a follow-up as it gets closer.
Yeah, just that one episode, because even when we did a 45-minute episode, we only talked about 4 of like the 12 main points, right? There's a lot more there to unpack. But again, that kind of is uneasiness out there in the marketplace with agents. And again, I think that for us, we always have we don't know where it's going to land, but we're predicting we think that it's going to land here. And we already have, we've already made adjustments. We're already planning to make those changes. We already have if this, then here's our plan. If not, here's our plan B, here's our plan C, and here's our plan D. And I think we're well positioned regardless of what happens with that call letter. And again, I think that agents should also be, interpreting that information, being aware of what's happening and having their plan A, B, C, D, if this, then that.
Yeah, I think the biggest way, not only in this industry, but just in life in general, no matter what you're doing, to insulate you from that happening is continue to develop yourself as an agent, continue to add value, continue to be that consummate professional. Because,
well, and when time gets tough too, like if you're good at what you do, you're always winning.
Yes.
And like, how many friends and people do we know that are in the loan or the mortgage industry or real estate?
Yeah.
Or guess what? I know a lot of people who are crushing it right now in real estate, just because, there's not as many first-time home buyers out there. There's still a lot of investors. There's a lot of syndicated funds. There's a lot of people crushing it in real estate, and it's a down cycle right now because of interest rates, and they're murdering it. So in any industry, regardless of what that environment looks like, if you are great at what you do, you're still going to crush it.
Yep. Yeah, guys, that's the final parting thing is tech's going to continue to scale. AI is going to come, pretty soon we're going to have the Turing test that passes all human automations, and carriers are going to try to replace agents with AI and everything like that. So, but the biggest way that we can combat those things is by continuing to add value as agents, being smart, being sophisticated, and being able to help our clients. So make that commitment and you'll always stay ahead of the curve.
All right. That's all we got for you, at least this time. Till next week.